Dr. Giles,
That's me.
how you doing?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Great to meet you.
As well. It took a minute to figure out this technology.
It's all good.
Never let the technology defeat you. That's all.
That's right. That's right. All right. So let me go here. So is there any echoes or anything in the background? You hear any echo or
Not for me.
any
How do I sound?
distortion? You're good.
You sound like you're sitting across the desk from me.
Yeah. All right. Take your mind into the wonderful world of physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kinetic Hour. Conversations with you and guests with your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Kinetic Hour. I am your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you all for tuning in to the Kinetic Hour as we are streaming live once again on Facebook, streaming live on Instagram, and streaming live on LinkedIn. So welcome to all three platforms. As always, go to my YouTube channels. The first is the Kinetic Hour, right here, the Kinetic Hour, and that is KENNETIC, the Kinetic Hour. Make sure you subscribe. Tell everyone that you know to subscribe. Click the thumbs up, click the notifications, leave your comments. Tell everyone you know to leave comments regarding the comments. And also go to my other YouTube channel, which is Kinetic Fit and Wellness Info, for everything physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and everything in between. Also, my Rumble channel, which is also the Kinetic Hour. Make sure you subscribe and tell everyone that you know to subscribe. It's always great to have you. And as I always say, whether it's one person or 1,000 people listening, my voice will continue to permeate. So thank you all for tuning in. My guest, as you can see, and I'm glad that he's here. He's a highly respected addiction medicine specialist with over 20 years of experience and more than 10,000 patients treated. He's triple board certified in addiction medicine, anesthesiology, and pain medicine. He combines vast medical expertise with a vast personal connection to the recovery process. His pioneering work in telemedicine during the COVID-19 pandemic transformed access to addiction care, establishing him as an entrepreneurial leader in the field, taking what he's learned from his mentors and professors, combining it with what we know about the habit formation. He uses his system to help many people free themselves from chemical prisons. In 2005, he opened his practice of addiction medicine, and he's been helping people overcome their challenges ever since. He's also the author of Outsmart Your Addiction. Learn the powerful system developed by a doctor to conquer his own fentanyl habit. And he's a regular media expert on addiction and habit disorders. He says, quote, "When courage overcomes habit, your story begins to change." Please welcome to the Kinetic Hour, Dr. Jason Giles.
What an awesome introduction. Really, really delightful. Thank you,
Thank
Doctor. That was awesome. Made me feel good about myself.
There you go. Thank you for taking the time out to grace the stage with me on the Kinetic Hour. So thank you so much. I have so much that I want to get to, and I'm glad you're here specifically for this because we've heard so much over the past few years about this specific subject here regarding fentanyl, but we'll talk about some other things as well. But first, I would just want to backtrack a little bit and for you to talk about your journey and how you got started, or what was the jumpstart for you to want to get into the medical field?
That's great. That's a way back. That's a way back. I have a feeling you and I might be contemporaries. A long time ago. Let's see. Well, look, in my family, in my immediate family, nobody was a doctor. Nobody was a nurse. I got onto this idea of helping people from when I was little. I think, this is just speculation, but I think growing up in the home of an alcoholic father, I think that had something to do with it. My dad had a drinking problem all through when I was a kid. I remember him struggling. I remember him, having to go to classes and having to go to AA meetings, and he wrestled with that. He finally got the plug in the jug, as they say, when I was a teenager, right about the time I left the house, right about the time I moved out. But that kind of stuff sticks with you, and my mom's response to it, the dynamic in the family, the sense that something wasn't right, which is obvious, was pretty obvious to the neighbors as well. But the belief that I could do something about it, I remember that was one of my earliest thoughts, that I felt responsible for protecting the family, for protecting my sister, for, in families where that's the case, and some of your listeners probably have gone through this also, the kids become the parents, kind of. The kids can become parentified, is the fancy term, but basically we're taking on the kids take on responsibilities that they're not supposed to. They're supposed to be kids, but they're watching out for the parents, making sure that the cigarettes get put out and those things like that. And so I remember that all the way back, and I remember thinking of, I wish I could solve this problem. I wish I could understand this. I wish I could help my dad not be this way. And so that's probably the beginning of it. That's probably the oldest idea. I have a great grandfather on my mom's side who was a dentist, but that's as close as anybody. And I had no relationship with him, and he was gone long before I came around.
Yeah.
So there wasn't anyone in the early stages mentoring me, but I was very fortunate when I went to junior college because I had dropped out of high school. I had maybe a downstream consequence of the rest of this stuff going at home. And so my high school transcript was not sharp. And I went to junior college to see if I could learn a couple of things. And along the way, I wound up taking a calculus class and became good friends with my buddy Mike. And his mom was a emergency doctor when I was about 18, and I was interested in this stuff. And somehow, to visit over at his house, she caught on to that, and I began to ask her questions. And she wound up mentoring me. She got me connected with emergency physicians in Los Angeles. And then other parts of the state. I would take field trips to go be in ERs and be around hospitals and stuff. And that's probably where the hook was set. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I got to college, so I got through junior college and then went to Berkeley. And there was this amazing free clinic in Berkeley. And this is right at the time that the AIDS epidemic bomb had just exploded. Yeah. And so homeless outreach and medical care and HIV, and it was a street clinic that was a cousin of the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic. It was sort of founded on the same idea, which is healthcare for all. And I fell in love with that, and it was one of those things where it was so busy and there was such a tremendous need, and there were doctors volunteering from Highland General Hospital and so forth at Oakland. There was such a need that it was basically, hey kid, check out this rash, or help deal with this problem. Or so we a few of us went through this, and we learned, and we were thrown into the mix. It was basically anybody who could help, and that's where I fell in love. So that's where I fell in love with taking care of patients. My own journey. I finished college, went to medical school. I had made the decision to go into medicine because of that experience at the free clinic. That was really the key vote. And then along the way, I suffered from liking everything. When I was on pediatrics, I wanted to be a pediatrician, and when I was on cancer surgery, I was going to be a cancer surgeon. I liked it all. It was all wonderful. Yeah. And so I wound up in anesthesia because anesthesia takes care of everything, right? It's all people with all problems having all kinds of surgery. It's that three-dimensional cube of you don't leave anyone out. And it was really fun. But because of this, maybe this old disposition or thinking that I could fix things, I started to think that there was something wrong. I had for a long time thought there was something wrong with me. And in the course of that process, as I did better and better and gained more and more mastery over this complex specialty that I was in, I felt worse and worse. I could see, maybe you'll relate to this. I could see that doing the job wasn't going to make me feel okay. You think, well, if I get there and I have the ticket and I do the thing and I'm doing the job, I'm going to be all right. And I didn't feel that way. I felt a sense of, I just spent 20 years working to get to that position, and it wasn't going to make me feel like I belonged, like I fit, like I was okay, like I had what everybody else had in terms of this sense of belonging, being part of things. And so I wanted, and that as things got better, my internal feelings got worse, and I wanted something to get some relief. I wanted something to take a break. I was not going to drink because I knew what that happened. I knew how that went with my dad. I had a very clear, don't do this.
Right.
And so being too clever, I thought, well, I'll use a little bit of this medicine that I give the patients after work just to catch a break, just to turn my mind off for a half an hour or an hour. And the bad news is it worked. And because it worked, I needed to turn my mind off more. And the way these things work, and this is what I learned later in specializing in this, is that the use of the substance creates the desire to use the substance. So if you drink, it makes you want to drink. And if you use fentanyl, which is what I was using, it makes you want to use fentanyl. So I was a pioneer in that. And fortunately, very fortunately, because that's the kind of stuff that can kill you quick, I came to the attention of my department chair, who noticed a large amount missing from the pharmacy because I was borrowing it.
Right. And
he said, if this is all returned by 6 o'clock, then, no problem. But of course he already knew the answer. And I said, can I come talk? And he said, I was hoping you would say that. And then that began a journey of recovery. So when I started that, I thought my problem at that point was the substances, but it was not at all. My solution was fentanyl. The way I managed my problem was fentanyl, but the real problem was how I saw myself, how I felt about myself in the world. And so I had to break that all the way down. I had to lose the idea that I was somehow protected from this problem because I knew so much and because I had all this, degrees and experience and stuff. It does not protect you from being a knucklehead, let me tell you.
Right.
And then I had to get to the heart of this family stuff that I can easily talk about now, but back then I couldn't talk about it all. And then I had to get to the heart of, what I was willing to do next in order to have the life that I really wanted. And mostly that was about giving up things. So it was about giving up the substances, clearly, but it was about giving up feeling separate. I had to give up feeling like I didn't belong. That was the hardest. And then as I did that more and more, I liked the people who were doing that also. So the people who had the courage to put the plug in the jug or to leave the substances behind and to be honest, I wanted to be more around those people. And the more I was around those people, the more professionally. So I went back. I went and did anesthesia. I was a cardiac anesthesiologist, and it's fun. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's a great job. But the job of fixing hearts this way, of helping people see themselves more clearly, and really heal themselves, because I can't do it for them.
Right.
That's turned out to be a much more satisfying, much more interesting. Just my best friend's a heart surgeon. And so we talk about shop sometimes, and, I do have longings. I do miss it sometimes, but I wouldn't trade this career that I wound up in for what happened. So there's a nutshell. That's how we wind up on this show today.
Yeah. And that's an interesting story, doing what you were doing. But then as you were helping others, you were falling apart, not being able to help yourself
Ironic,
in the
right?
process.
Ironic, yeah. And the prevalence of this problem is, there's probably 10 or 12% of your listeners, right? Well, your audience might be different, but on average, 10 or 12% of Americans
Yeah.
or Canadians or Argentinians or French, they all have about the same rate, and those are the people who are struggling with this right now. Lifetime prevalence is higher. It's probably 25% of people over their lifetimes will have some kind of substance-related challenge. And being a doctor or a cop or a pilot or a teacher or a pastor or a bricklayer or a roofer, it doesn't whatever your job is, the malady does not care. You can't educate yourself out of this problem, and your job is not why you're drinking.
Right.
So
Right.
so it gets doctors just as much. Doctors, fortunately, we're aware of it, and there are programs that exist. Fortunately, I got wrapped up in a program that loved me till I could love myself. Protected me from making more stupid choices. That's 25 years ago now. That's been a long time. But in the beginning, I needed all that help. I needed all that structure. I needed all that support and guidance. And I'm glad glad doesn't quite cover it. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for all that, for all of what went down.
Right. And just so we're all kind of clear, I want to go over some fundamentals.
Yeah.
So we're all on the same. So we're all on the same page.
Let's do it.
Because it's pretty much a consensus now that virtually everyone has at least one person in their family that has gone through what you've gone through, or to some degree. Because I can go for an hour telling you about my brother and his story with addiction. And, he developed cancer at 14 and went through all this stuff that, I'll probably go over as we go along here.
Sure.
But let's go over some fundamentals just for a few minutes. How do you define addiction? First of all, how do you define addiction?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to think about it.
Okay.
Addiction is something that you keep doing that's not good for you. That's probably the simplest way to break it down. Something you keep doing that is not good for you is probably even a better definition. There's a lot of other ways to slice it. One of my favorites is activity without progress. Activity without progress. And so, look busy, or you seem to be going in circles or spinning your wheels, but you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's another way to think about it more broadly. The word addiction comes from the Latin addicere, which is a word we don't use much anymore because you can't do this anymore. You can go into debt, but addicere means to sell yourself into bondage. It's to sell yourself into slavery. And where that comes from is in ancient times, there weren't banks and bankruptcy laws and regulation and stuff. If you wanted to have something that you couldn't afford, you would find a rich guy and say, hey, I really want to buy this set of tools so I can make chariots, or I want to buy this piece of property so I can grow, grapes on it, or whatever. And you make a pitch, you make the deal. I've got 20%, but I need the other 80%. And if the guy thought you were a good credit risk, he would lend you the money with the property as security, right? So if it was real estate, he could claim the real estate. If it's a horse or something like that, it's not so easy to get a horse back if you run off with the horse.
Yeah.
Well, in addition to the surety interest in whatever the thing is you were trying to buy, he had an interest in you. And so if you failed to pay the debt back, he could take you and sell you. There's, you could chop wood or mine salt or fight in a war or something like that for somebody else. And your physical being would be put on a ship somewhere, and he'd get paid back for the money that he lost. And so whoever would willingly do that, adicere, was selling himself into bondage. And we don't have that anymore, but that's exactly how addiction works, right? So in exchange for the good feelings now of a glass of whiskey or a line of cocaine or some pills, you're going to have to pay that debt back.
Right.
And you pay it back with your very soul. You pay it back with yourself, right? So it's not like you can buy your way out of having to deal with this. You're on the hook. So I think it's a good word. I think it covers the nature of the problem. It's kind of cool thinking about ancient times that somebody would, well, no, I really want this piece of property. I'm willing to put myself on the line.
Right.
And that's what you do when you take cocaine or alcohol or any of the other, or any of it, right? So you can think about it in terms of gambling as a process addiction. You can think about it in terms of sex with somebody you're not supposed to have sex with, and you know it. You're right. You're selling yourself, because what you get in exchange for the excitement and the pleasure and the so forth is you lose yourself, right? You lose yourself. So that's how I think it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you lose yourself doing the same negative things over and over again, expecting the positive result.
Activity without progress. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned cocaine, and because, as we progress into today, we have fentanyl. Back in the 50s and 60s, we had heroin was the big thing. Then in the 70s and 80s, it was cocaine and crack, the crack epidemic.
Yep, I remember it.
In the 90s, thanks to William Jefferson Clinton, we have the advertising of pharmaceutical drugs on television.
Yes.
And it's pretty much been that way ever since. And then today, here in this 21st century, there's fentanyl. So what is fentanyl, and how is it used? Because it is used in hospitals. So what is fentanyl? Because so many people are fearful and have, because it's plastered on television almost every single day, of how evil fentanyl is.
Right.
So can you tell us what exactly is fentanyl and how it was designed to be used originally?
Sure, of course. So fentanyl is a painkiller. Fentanyl is a painkiller like heroin is, like morphine is, like oxycodone or OxyContin, right? The big OxyContin thing in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a pain medicine, and the way pain medicines work is they reduce suffering. That's how they work. So these opiate or narcotic, these things all in one way or another came from the opium poppy, whether they're artificially created, but they mimic the opium poppy.
Mm-hmm.
And the poppy itself, it's heroin or morphine or codeine also come out of poppies. They mimic the body's own chemical called endorphins. And endorphins are the signal of everything is okay. It's the signal of everything is okay. So when you have endorphins, when your endorphins are rushing through your body, it's because you just got through something difficult, or you achieved something that was hard. You're relaxed, you're comfortable, you're not afraid, you're at ease. And so way back in ancient times, like, pre-civilization times, these poppies would grow amongst the wheat, and they figured out that if they dried the sap and ate it and then later smoked it, they could have this sense of ease and comfort. So the scientists got a hold of this stuff and tried to figure out exactly what is it, how do we make it more give more ease and more comfortable. There's a great book I just read recently about the drug use during Nazi times in the Third Reich, and they were using amphetamines and opiates, but the German chemists were coming up with stuff all the time, all through the 20s and 30s. They were coming up with new molecules and new versions of stuff, and so they invented methadone. And they invented Darvocet, Darvon. These are all synthetic opiates. But in 1967, fentanyl was created in a laboratory, and its distinguishing characteristic is two things. One is it's super strong, so it's about 80 times stronger than morphine. What that means is you need a very, very small amount, just a very tiny little bit of it to have the same effect of, a larger dose in milligrams of morphine. And then the other thing about it is it's very strongly acting at the receptor. So all those feelings, all those good feelings, it works great. It's really good at it.
Yeah.
We use fentanyl in the operating room to deal with very painful things. So it's like the antidote to really painful things. Classic use of fentanyl is for heart surgery. So if they have to open up your chest with a saw and go through the bone and spread all the ribs and get inside, incredibly painful, especially afterwards when you're back awake. God willing, the surgery goes well.
Yeah.
And so if you get enough fentanyl in you, you don't care that you just had your chest torn open and your heart worked on. Doesn't bother you. If you, heaven forbid, are in a crash and you break some long bones or have some burns, things that are very painful, fentanyl is a wonder drug. It's an absolute magician's trick that you can be alive with that much pain and it not hurt, it not bother you. So fentanyl is a great drug when used appropriately. Same as morphine, same as heroin, same as Tylenol, great drug when used appropriately. But Tylenol can kill you if you take too much of it, right?
Right.
But in the case of fentanyl, because the sense of good feelings, because, wow, this feels really great, for lack of a more complicated way to say it, we like that, right? Human beings like feeling good.
Right.
And so instead of working hard, saving, investing, acquiring your thing that you want, building your family, right, being the best man that you can be, all those things take time and effort and energy, and they're dicey. They may be hard. You may get setbacks. It feels great to live a good life and have that accomplishment, but you can get like pretty close to that feeling with fentanyl. So you feel great for a little while, for an hour or two, as long as the drug lasts. And you don't have to do all that self-sacrifice, deferred gratification, self-discipline. You don't have to do all that work. You can just feel pretty good right now. And so when people start doing that, the time between when they enjoy feeling good from fentanyl and when they need to use it again gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, until finally, because of how the body responds to the fentanyl, you have to use it just to feel normal. In other words, you feel bad because it's missing, and then you use it to get back up to zero.
Right.
If you keep using it, you don't even get back to zero. So now you have to use it to feel bad. And that's where bondage is, right? That's now you're dependent on it. You have to have it.
Yeah.
Just to not feel like you're dying. So that's where people get trapped. But there's lots of substances that do that. Alcohol will do that. And downers will do that. Valium and Xanax and things like that will do it. Cocaine works the other way. It's the up feeling of power and strength, and I can do this, I can do everything, and then eventually you need to do it to feel kind of okay, and then no matter how much you do, you still don't feel as great as you think you ought to, and now you're trapped. And so that's how all the substances work. Probably how all the process addictions work as well. The first video game success is awesome, and then you keep going, and then you're like, he never comes out of his room, right?
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah, I remember those days. I remember those days too.
Yeah.
Max Payne. That's a long time ago.
Yeah. I remember those days. The Atari days.
Yeah. I know the guy who created Atari.
Okay.
And, Nolan Bushnell. He's still kicking, and I don't think he had any idea about that kind of stuff when he made it. Just fun games, but.
Yeah, I never really because I never was. Well, actually, I played video games a lot when I was younger. I was more of an Intellivision person.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
I guess as a 10 or 11-year-old, I don't know if I would be considered addicted to it. I mean, I did play it a lot.
Right.
But as a child, hey, it was fun.
You're supposed to. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
fun. You mentioned the poppy plant.
Yes.
And as soon as you mention that, the first thing that pops up for me is the Wizard of Oz. When they're running through the poppy fields, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, Dorothy's starting to, you know, she's starting to feel like she's, she can't even run anymore. The lion can't run anymore, and all of a sudden they just pass out. Um, I know that. Well, I was reading some statistics about 1 in 10 physicians become addicted to either drugs or alcohol.
That's about right. That sounds
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah. 1 in 6 surgeons. 1 in 6 surgeons abuse alcohol. Um, why do you believe that so many physicians of today, or even yesterday, uh, become so addicted to the very drugs that they're prescribing to their patients?
I don't think that it's just because they're prescribing it to their patients, or it's that the statistics that you cited apply to the general population also. So if the
Right.
general population was a bartender, or could or a beer vendor, or could prescribe fentanyl, or some countries you can get opiates just over the counter at the pharmacy. Here we put a lid on that, so you can't do that without a prescription.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that the doctors are getting addicted to it because they prescribe it. I think it's because they're human beings living in
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
Alcohol among physicians, alcohol is far and away way more common. Even anesthesiologists, you would think, well, anesthesiologists, they've got access to the candy store, and they're going to get the opiates and natural occupational hazard. But even anesthesiologists, it's alcohol is by far and away the number one thing,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
socially permissible, because it's just, no one's going to say much until it gets kind of late stage. You can cover it up. It's after work. It's wine with dinner, or drinks with friends on the weekends or something, and then this can turn into a problem. Substance pills are number two. Something like probably 10 or 12% of the country is dependent on sedatives.
Sedatives. Yeah.
It's more women than men, but it's not only women. And it applies to physicians also. Physicians get hooked on these things too, just because they're human beings.
Yeah.
There's not a special particular occupational hazard for opiates because they're doctors, or the stress of the job.
Okay.
There are some increased incidences of things like in police officers and dentists and so forth. Their dentists have a special occupational hazard of using nitrous oxide because it's hard to get. It's not easy, and it's right there. And so they're the most common by profession user of that particular substance, and it's sort of obvious why, because it's on the wall and hose or the mask. But but it's not that doctors are at a special risk because they're doctors. In fact,
Yeah.
they're probably a little bit less likely because they're doctors, because they do know a little bit more, and they also have this professional standard that not to knock forklift drivers, but if you're a little buzzed when you come to work driving a forklift, most of the time people cut you some slack. About 1 in 6, about 15% of the workforce currently is either intoxicated today while they're listening to this, or hungover from last night.
Mm-hmm.
So presenteeism is the name for that. You go to work anyway, you play hurt, right? You show up even though you're not yourself.
Yeah.
There's a lot more jobs where you can get away with that than you can showing up to operate in the OR or do a shift in the your pediatric clinic. You cannot smell like booze in the pediatric clinic, or be out of it because the staff will say something. Yeah. So it's even the prevalence is actually a little bit lower during the working years of doctors and nurses, but then afterwards, once they retire, they catch up. So catch up to the general population. So they're not particularly more likely or less likely overall. But when they do get addicted, when they are wrapped up in substance use disorder, again, there's always something else behind it. No one says, I think I'm going to be an alcoholic, that
Right.
I want this load of problems. They think that drinking is relieving their problems, and unfortunately it does in the beginning. It's really bad because physicians are responsible for hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of patients in their practice and in their clinic. Their clinics are economically important for getting people back to work, right? Supporting the community, the people who work in the clinic. So if a doctor drops out of her clinic because of substance use disorder, it's devastating for the community, for the rest of the practice if she's in a group practice, for the rest of the call group if she's doing that. I'm not picking on women. Got same thing for guys who are doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So it's these positions of public trust where we're supposed to be healthy, we're supposed to set good examples. When we fall, it's bad. It's especially devastating. For a long time, if you were a physician with a substance use disorder, really up until the 80s, if you were a physician with a drug or alcohol problem, you just lost your license. And some people still think that you should. Some people think you just you just can't be a doctor.
Yeah.
With time, we learned that this is not just a treatable, but a durably treatable problem, right? If it treated correctly and with a willing participant, that's one of the things you need also. Same with any treatment, right? You can't have a cancer patient that doesn't go to chemotherapy or won't show up for their treatments. So if you have a willing participant and a good long-term monitoring program, the success rates are 9 out of 10 or 19 out of 20 for doctor programs. So to throw away all that training and to throw away that career and to not try to help the doctor who's a patient also, we've gotten past that, fortunately. So doctors that come forward, they have to go through an ordeal. There's a lot of loss of trust and all that stuff, and a rebuilding path. But if they stick with the program and stay sober, you can have, I'm like Exhibit A. You can have an amazing life after the catastrophe. You can be of enormous help to the world and to your patients and to your family, if you conduct yourself differently, really, if you behave differently, if you take responsibility.
Responsibility, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the statistics. I'm going to put something on the screen here because I thought this was interesting. Because you mentioned, let me see, let me put this up here. So, and I'm just going to read here. So we don't want that. So we're going to go here. So right here, 1 in 6 surgeons abuse alcohol, but I just want to go right here. By personal observation, the factors that drive a surgeon to look for an easy outlet in alcohol include the long working hours in the operation theater under stressful conditions, lack of major increment or periodic hike in salary, no appreciation or any type of recognition from the mentor or organization, the stress of either causing or managing a post-operative surgical complication, the medical legal hassles in the career and reputation of a surgeon, if there is an unexpected or inadvertent surgical error, and job dissatisfaction. Increased alcohol consumption in surgeons has been associated with older age, disappointment or dissatisfaction with career and job, heavy smoking, use of benzodiazepines, stress and burnout symptoms, suicidal ideation, psychiatric morbidity, emotional exhaustion, and diseases related to alcohol. Protective factors against the surgeons having alcohol dependence were marriage or spousal support, career satisfaction, job autonomy, and academic practice. This one right here, stress and burnout symptoms, because the physicians and surgeons, they do work long hours, and many physicians do become literally burned out
Sure.
with their practice of wanting to do the right thing, be the best surgeon, not make any mistakes.
Of course.
They know that they know that the person that they're practicing on, their life is in their hands,
Of course.
so it can create a lot of stress. What are some of the things that people or surgeons or physicians can do to alleviate the burnout?
Well, that's a great question. And I think a lot of those things are a bit, as I was reading the description along with you, they're a bit chicken and egg. So every one of those symptoms, right? Stressors, exacerbating factors, they are also, you get those if you have an alcohol problem.
Mm.
So it's like the guy who said, if you had my wife, you'd drink too, right? Or my favorite one, the guy said, I drink because my wife won't stop crying.
Oh
Right?
gosh.
So if you're in that kind of situation where you've turned to alcohol to manage your feelings,
Yeah.
not only is it not going to work with any kind of durability, right? You might get a little bit of temporary relief for a few hours while you're drinking, but the bill comes due in the morning in terms of emotional grief, and things are not better. And the time that you might have spent connecting authentically with a person to ask for help, or to reduce your responsibility if you're overloaded at work, or to practice self-care, or to take a vacation, or do things that are the discomfort is upfront rather than the relief is upfront.
Mm.
Right? Asking for help, saying, "Well, I'm not a superhuman, and this is too many cases, or this is too difficult, or whatever the situation is." Being able to ask for help, and alcohol use preempts that. So once you get caught in that spiral, yeah, the job is more stressful, and the performance degrades from whatever the effect the alcohol is. Alcohol affects your sleep. So if you get poor sleep the night before surgery, everything is a bit edgier, and
Right.
your margin of error gets smaller because you're more worried about making mistakes, and you're more likely to make mistakes if you haven't slept. So I'm not sure if it's the job that caused those problems, or if the drinking caused those problems. It's hard to say, right? Chicken and egg at that
Mm-hmm.
at that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what surgeons
Mm-hmm.
or other doctors, or anybody can do, because it's surgeons, but it's also others. But what you can do if you find yourself getting in that situation is you have to ask for help. You have to ask for help in a way that's confidential, because you don't want to lose your mandate at work. Doctors and surgeons especially are stoical, and they seem very tough and armored on the outside because they don't want to appear weak, because they're the ones making these decisions about cutting into living human beings. Things in any other arena would be either crimes or assault. Surgeons, you sign up for that. Like, I've got this tumor, can you cut it out? So the surgeon stabs you to get
Mm-hmm.
right, and slashes you to get and burns you, and to get the tumor out. And we willingly show up for this because the results are better than the tumor growing.
Mm.
So surgeons have this notion that they have to uh, be perfect and be right and be awesome, and doctors in general. But this happens with parents, this happens with teachers, this happens with police officers and judges and attorneys and forklift drivers, right? They think they have to do their job exactly right, or they're going to lose their appreciation at work. They'll lose their bonus. They'll lose their mandate. There's their authority at work. If they say, "Hey, today's one of those days where I don't feel like I'm driving the forklift so straight. I'm worried about my mother who's sick, or I'm things with me and my wife aren't going so great, or I don't know what to do about my kid who's doing this thing," and they have regular life problems, but don't feel that there's a safe place for them to talk about it. So And if you go to your EAP officer at work and say, "Hey, I think I might be drinking too much," then they automatically trigger a whole chain of events, because their goal is to protect the hospital and to protect the patients,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to put that first, and that's what you'd want them to do as not the doctor, but that's not necessarily the easiest on ramp for the doctor to get help. So a confidential group of fellow surgeons, in this case, or fellow doctors. So there are things called caduceus meetings for doctors, which are just the doctors, not the administration.
Okay.
And it's a place to check these things out. You can say, here's what's going on, and they're like, oh yeah, that happened to us, and here's what we did, and you can get some guidance and some mentorship, just like surgeons did when they were learning to be surgeons. They didn't assume they knew how to do everything in the beginning. They had to go to school. They had to go to surgeon residency. And if you say, well, this is a new arena, I don't know how to take care of myself in this regard, I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to be honest and talk to others about how I feel and what's going on in my life. Then, because that's the real solution: connection, honesty, doing things different, getting more sleep, getting some exercise, taking better care of yourself, sometimes calling time out or saying no to cases and to growth. That's how you keep yourself from burning out, and maybe even re-examining what you're doing. I mean, sometimes people we make these decisions about our careers in our 20s in medicine, right? So you go through medical school from, let's say, 22 to 26, and then you pick your residency at 26. And you're supposed to do that for the rest of your career, for another 40 years in your career.
Right.
It might not be the best person to ask a 26-year-old how to spend the rest of your life.
Right.
And so sometimes it's a re-examination. Sometimes it's a look again at why you're doing this job. Maybe you've outgrown this job, and maybe that's what the burnout is you're not satisfied. So I think as much as possible, whatever job you do should excite you. You should get fired up by it. Can't wait to get out of bed to go do whatever that is. Drive a forklift, be a teacher, be a surgeon, whatever it is that's got you excited. That's what you should do. And so it's difficult. You got a mortgage and a family and people counting on you, and this identity maybe that you built for the last 10, 15 years as a surgeon, until it finally hits you. Wait a minute, I'm getting older and I'm not liking this job any better. It's very difficult to pull out of that and go, well, I need a reevaluation here. I need to look at this.
Yeah.
You're going to wind up doing that anyway. It's nice to not have to do it on the back end of an alcohol problem. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not sustainable to be miserable in your job and just say, well, I'll just have a few drinks to get through it. That's going to turn into its own problem. And then you're going to wind up having to deal with this. Where am I? Why am I here? What do I want? You're going to have to get to those questions anyway. So my counsel to the doctors or anyone else who's struggling with this is just go right for that. If you're flirting with an alcohol problem, if things are starting to get out of hand, I don't think there is such a thing as denial. I think you, your listeners, and you, anyone else in this situation, you're leaning on the wine too much. That this cocaine, which was on vacation, every few years, is now something that you're calling the guy, and you've got the setup and you're looking forward to it. And what you're doing. I don't have to convince you that you've got an alcohol problem. If you do or not.
Yep.
If you're at that stage, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Don't let it continue to get worse. Get in and get some help on it. I don't know if that's a long answer to your question. This is like life stuff. And
absolutely. Yeah. No. This is great. And I'm glad you mentioned the stats, which I thought was really interesting about the ratio of women surgeons, which is higher than men. 25.6% of women versus 13.9% of men with substance abuse, as opposed to 6.2% for the general public. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is like an off limits touchy discussion about women in surgery.
Yeah.
because your phones are going to light up, and I'm going to get a lot of upset people. But my wife started in surgery,
Okay.
and she, just speaking about her, she came to the conclusion that the thing that she wanted to do most of all was to be a mother and raise a family, and that being a surgeon, she was on her way to be a trauma surgeon, which is, always on call. She was in residency when she made this decision, that the effect of that life on her ability to be a mother and raise the kids was not worth it.
Mm.
And so in her case, I'm just speaking about one woman.
Yeah.
In her case, she decided that career choice was one that and she was great. She was a great surgeon. For all of that, she was not willing to give up her family for that.
Mm.
She's not willing to give up what she thought was her primary job, which is to be a mother to the kids.
Right.
The
Right.
kids are in their 20s. One's just finishing college. One's already got a job working as an economist in a startup, and they would agree. They were the beneficiaries of her attention and her focus and her, all of it. As was I. Having a brilliant, totally capable. We're matched in every way professionally. But
Yeah.
she did this because it's what she wanted to do. We're fortunate that I could support us while we were doing that, so that she could do that job. We made sacrifices for sure, but the surgeon mother or surgeon wife decision, I guess I'm not surprised that. See, part of drinking or using substances is it allows us to be in, or it gives us the feeling of being in two places at the same time.
Right.
So, right, you're not as good as you want to be at work, maybe, and this is hypothetical. Maybe this is not true for any of the women in that 26%, but you're not as good as you want to be at work, because to be as good as you can be in a job requires enormous dedication and not just showing up, right?
Yep.
Be excellent at anything, whatever that is, requires time commitment and dedication and almost singularity of focus. You have to take care of yourself, but right after that is whatever you're working on, whatever that is.
Yeah.
That is, some would say, I'm being very careful here, some would say incompatible with being as present as you need to be for your family. And so sometimes the wine after work makes sense to paper over or to smooth over some of those feelings of not being good enough in these two arenas.
Yeah.
We have this notion of do it all, right? Do it all, right? We've been doing it all, but you don't hear about men trying to do it all,
Right.
right?
Right.
I should do it all. Like what is that? We have our and I know many will disagree with me, but I think and my wife can do anything. She's capable of doing anything. It's a question of what she prefers to do and what she's suited to do.
Mm-hmm.
Same with me. I can raise the kids. I can change a diaper.
Absolutely.
It's not what I'm suited to do. It's not the thing that I am the best at or feel the best at doing. And so if you are doing a job that you're unhappy in, something's got to give.
Yeah.
Either your performance at work, or you're going to figure out some way to manage your feelings, or something bad's going to happen. So I guess I'm not surprised that that the challenges of that particular job, coupled with the challenges of giving up the prime, mother years of your life, your 20s and 30s, and 40s,
Mm-hmm.
are it's a big sacrifice to ask. And I think there's my guess is in many cases there's probably a lot of regret. Now there's some women, just to make sure I'm not thrown out here. There's some women who somehow manage to do it all, but I think there are compromises to be made everywhere. There's trade-offs, no matter what you're doing. No one can really be on point in everything all the time. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see that as well, especially here in American society. The notion, or the notion that's evolved over the decades, is that women can or are supposed to do it all, or made to feel like they can do it all. But like you said, something eventually will have to give, or else you're going to be a part of this burnout class. You're going to
Exactly.
be a part of this burnout class because you're trying to do it all and prove that you can do it all. You can do all the things that society says that you're supposed to do as the
Yeah.
woman.
Yep. Yep.
And or again, here in America, the gender war, I can do this, everything that the man can do. Or and again, you have to give up something, especially if you have children. You have to have, the ratio is never going to be here. The ratio has to be either here or here.
Right.
It has to be one or the other. It can never be here. All right. The more you try to do it, the more you're going to burn yourself out. And then you'll be able to do neither.
Bingo. Precisely. And so, yeah, I mean, this is silly and trivial and not in the same league. But I remember when I was a kid in the library, and I loved to go to the library and I loved to read. It was my joy and my escape. And we had a pretty nice public library where I grew up. I remember I was around 10 or 11 years old, and I was checking out books all the time. I'd read them and return them, and it was there all the time. So, some of this to escape because of the stuff I was telling you about in the beginning of the talk. But I loved the library, and it dawned on me when I was around, I don't know, 10 or 11, that no matter how many books I checked out and read, I could never read them all.
Right.
Now that's a very childish appreciation of the world, but it's kind of the same. There's some things, right? You probably can't go to all 206 countries.
Yeah. Right.
Unless that's all you're doing. But if you're going to
Yeah.
go to all 206 countries, I don't know, you're probably not in bodybuilding competitions also, or you're probably not building soapbox racers with your kids, or you're probably, there's something has to give, something has to be traded off.
Yeah.
And these are crazy examples, but yes, I think
this is great.
I think if you get, well, what do I actually want? What actually brings me joy? What am I the best at doing? Where am I, and if there's circumstances, and you can't always just quit your job and go surfing because you love surfing, but maybe you can. Maybe there's a way to work that out. Maybe there's a way to figure out how to be a surfing instructor, and then I don't know, it's America, right? So there's opportunities, but you have to be honest and you have to ask for help, because this covert strategy of being in a double bind where you think, well, if I'm not a perfect surgeon, then what's the point of giving up all this family time? And if I'm not the super mom or super dad, well, then why did I have kids at all?
Right.
Everybody has clay feet. We're all struggling to do it, but sometimes you can put too much on your plate and set yourself up for failure. You can make it so, and this is deeper. Maybe that's what you're trying to do, is have that sense of being inadequate. Maybe that not good enough feeling is what you're after, and that's a deeper problem. That's a deeper problem.
It is for many people.
Great question, Kenan. Great question.
Yeah, and because we live in a society of dualities, we have an opioid crisis, but then at the same time, we have a so-called war on drugs. So because of that, you created what's called addiction doctors.
Yeah.
So talk about why you created it and what it is specifically.
Sure, you bet. So yeah, this war on drugs comes from the idea that you said this a minute ago about the fentanyl. Why is it so dangerous? And well, the fentanyl sitting in a bottle or the fentanyl sitting in a capsule it's not dangerous. It's not going to leak down your throat. It's not going to jump in your arm and light itself on fire and run up your straw. It's not going to happen. So what's dangerous is that we try and get something for nothing. What's dangerous is that we try and get these feelings without having the consequences. That's what's dangerous. If we recognized it as the tool / poison that it is, well, we wouldn't have this problem. So the idea of going to war on drugs is the same as going to war on terror, right?
Mm.
Going to war on terror. What is? I
Mhm.
mean, that's just
Mhm.
absolute. And I grew up in all that with the right weapons of mass destruction and that,
Yep, yep.
and it's just straight crap. We were just lied to about all of that and
Yep,
the tragedy that ensued. But you want to go back before that? It's the war on communism. Communism kills
yep,
itself.
yep,
We did not need to bomb all of Southeast Asia in order
yep.
to kill communism. We just let it burn itself out.
Mhm.
The mother of all communism was the Soviet Union, and that collapsed under its own lies, under its own inefficiencies. So we didn't need to do those things. And if you read Johan Hari's book about called the Chasing the Scream, about the history of the war on drugs, it's as much about the people waging war being in power as it is about trying to help people. We have exported our drug policy all over the world, in some cases hampering research on things like psychedelics and marijuana. There's probably some good things in there. We're starting to learn there's some good things in these substances, but we haven't even been able to research them because they're drugs.
Yep. I was gonna
We
ask you about that too.
Yeah, our war on drugs has led to, we're in a chemical war with China. This is a chemical war that they're sending over their was fentanyl itself, and we got onto that. So now they send the fentanyl precursors, the drugs right before the fentanyl that you have to put together like Tinker Toys or Legos in a laboratory, and you can make fentanyl.
Mhm.
And then they exported the know-how, so they trained the cartels in making these drugs. So now the manufacturing takes place in Mexico mostly. That's where most cocaine comes from now.
Mhm.
And so the result of the war on the drugs has led to their proliferation. There's now there's more, and we're getting close to the precursor, which is like the round pieces of the Tinker Toys and the sticks. You can't ban those because they're used to make everything, right? So the most fundamental chemical building blocks now starting to be, the chemists in Mexico know how to make those. It's not just Mexico; they're in Canada also, but
Yeah, yeah.
the chemists in Mexico know how to make these precursors, and then they assemble the precursors and to make fentanyl. So now there is no way to physically stop it because you can't outlaw acetic acid. That's in everything. You can't ban those things because they're ubiquitous.
Yep.
So the result of our trying to cut off all the heads of the hydra is that two more heads grow back in its place, which means the focus on banning the drug, right? If you think about it, it means that people are not in control of themselves, and that they're idiots, and that if you put a drug in front of them, they'll just do it. So we have to stop the drug, otherwise everyone will use it. But that's absurd, right? That's absurd. Alcohol is on all the shelves, and yet, it isn't 99% of the country that's drunk today.
Mm.
People have control mechanisms. Half of the country doesn't drink at all,
Right.
literally at all. So it can't be the drug. The war is waged on the wrong battlefield. That's not the right place. The place to wage the war, first of all, it's not a war. We shouldn't be waging war. People who have meaningful lives, who are in community with others and feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, they don't get into trouble with drugs and alcohol. In fact, one of the hardest things about getting sober in the beginning, and addiction doctors is about helping people get started being sober, is that when you first put your life back together, when it's all a shambles, you've oftentimes lost close friends, family doesn't want to talk to you, hard to get hired for a job because of all what's happened. Maybe you're coming out of, dealing with the legal system for whatever the stuff you were doing. And so you're like, hey, it's going to be great. Be sober. It's awesome. Don't use drugs when you feel bad. And you're like, my life is awful.
Mm-hmm.
Later, once you've been sober, once you put your life back together for a long time, it's much easier to stay sober because you don't want to lose your job. You don't want to lose your friends. You don't want to lose your standing in the community. You don't want to lose your freedom if you had been incarcerated previously. And so the stakes go up and you have more to lose, and people are, and also more benefit from staying sober. People are more likely to stay sober the longer they're sober. Once you get to 2 years, the chances of relapse go down to, something like 25% of what they were initially. So you're 75% home if you can get to 2 years sober. If you can get to 10 years sober, then you're not going back. I mean, occasionally people relapse, but it's less than 5%. So that has to do with equity in your life. It has to do with the way you live your life is what helps you continue to live your life that way, if that makes sense. That's the opposite of a war on drugs, right? You can't send troops to interdict loneliness. The way you deal with loneliness is by connecting with other people.
Right.
The way you deal with loneliness is by telling the truth about the things we're not good at, being honest about ourselves. That's how we connect, and by listening to others. So yeah, the war on drugs will continue to produce more casualties, and it will continue to produce more combatants on the other side. There'll be more drugs. There's a new drug that's an amphetamine based coming out of the Middle East. There's this xylazine that we're seeing in around Philadelphia, but it's starting to spread on the East Coast. It's a animal tranquilizer that combined with fentanyl makes it even more potent, and weirdly maybe protects you from overdose from fentanyl. So you get more people who are involved in it for longer. It's there's always going to be some new drug. We will never win the war on drugs. It's time to bury the hatchet on the war and focus on because remember, the drugs are a solution. The drugs are what we use when we feel bad. The drugs are what we use when we feel disconnected. The drugs are what we use when we feel burned out and frustrated and useless and scared. Those are the things we need to work on. Those are treated by community, connection with a higher power, with something that's bigger than you, even if that's just your community and the people that you love, and by service to others. So it's hard to feel worthless when you're helping other people. That's the antidote. It's hard to feel like, well, I'm no good and nobody needs me when you're actively helping others. So that's the place that we should wage war, if you will, is on this alienation, on this sense of separateness. The company started during all the lockdowns. So I've been an addiction doctor for a long time, and came telemedicine, which is what we're doing right now, right? Teleconnecting, video podcasts for us in medicine, that grew out of this, everything being locked down. And so the addictions don't stop. The alcoholism doesn't stop. The need for care doesn't stop. But getting through all of the PPE and the masks and the fear, and we didn't want to, there's a time before we realized what this actually was, that we were worried about spreading it. And so the innovative solution was to bring the care and know-how to the patients by telemedicine. And that could have been something that just came and went, but I had a feeling that it was going to stay, because there's something about this medium that actually you lose some stuff because you're not in the same room and you're not breathing the same air. And I think that does help in terms of connection. But there's something about the nature of this problem that people are more honest. They're more willing to tell the truth. They feel safer in an environment where they're in their homes or they're in a treatment center. Our patients are all in treatment centers. And I just had a hunch that it was going to stick around past all the pandemic times, whenever that ended. And so I went all in on delivering care this way, and became specialized in this method, and got a lucky break. It turns out that's true, and that lets us. There we go. That's our website. That lets us connect with patients, and it lets us have a staff that can be from all over. I don't know where you are.
I'm just south of Los Angeles.
So yeah, so we happen to be in the same town, but we don't have to be, right? I could be I could be in New York, and you could be in Miami, and we can have this conversation, and you can have the patients at treatment centers, and our treatment centers are all over the country.
Yeah.
And the caregivers, right? The doctors and the nurses and so forth, they can be anywhere. So I wind up being able to bring the very best people aboard because I'm not restricted to, lives within a half an hour of the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
So telemedicine in this case is about getting things started. It's about the beginning, detox, stabilization, early recovery, psychiatry for the patients that have mental health issues as well, and it gets them off on the right foot. And when you come into treatment and you feel terrible, the language of feeling better, of feeling like a human being again, of getting control of your own body, not being in pain, not being terrified, that helps set people off on the right foot.
Yeah.
And then it facilitates or fosters a connection between them and the rest of the clinical team, because like I said, the substances are not the real problem. They're just the most superficial problem. So we take care of the top layer, get you feeling yourself again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the brilliant clinicians at the treatment centers we work with, they can get to the, why are you burned out? What should you be doing? What do you need to reconcile? What's your source of grief? All the work to get you back on track so that you don't turn back to the bottle.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you're providing this. I wish my brother had something like this available to him, because I'm here in Los Angeles, and we're talking about a good 20-year stretch of him off and on going through being addicted to different medications or psychiatric drugs, the Seroquel, the Cymbalta, the Lexapro, and then going to these facilities that, honestly, for these facilities, right here in Norwalk, there's a Department of State Hospitals Metropolitan. And then here in Long Beach, my hometown, there's a La Casa Psychiatric Health Facility. But these places are they're almost like jail asylums, where they do more harm to the patient than good, from what I've seen over the last decade and a half.
Yeah.
They literally keep the patients hooked versus doing what they can to wean them off so they can start to create the better life for themselves. So my question, and you mentioned having empathy, empathy being really big, which I really didn't see in some of these facilities. Empathy is huge. Compassion is huge, versus apathy, which is what I saw in these facilities. I want to go back to what we just saw for detox, or our addiction doctors, the detox program, and then psychiatry or psychiatric help, because a lot of times, from what I've seen, that many psychiatrists prescribe different medications for their patients. So for a detox program, is it do the patients become weaned off of the drugs eventually? Because I sort of see that many times in psychiatry that many patients get addicted to the very medications that they're being prescribed.
Sure.
So in the psychiatry program that's offered in addiction doctors, or in some other facilities, which I'll present in just a minute, can patients wean themselves off without any real complications?
Of psychiatric medications?
Yes.
Well, okay, so that is a little bit more of a question. So there's a phenomenon that you might be referring to about patients that check into treatment centers that get they pick up psychiatric diagnoses. And unfortunately, as you're going through the throes of early withdrawal and the disorienting aspect of landing in a treatment center when you were doing whatever you were doing the day before, or the week before, depending on when you interview a patient or when you check in on a patient, you might get different diagnoses. So somebody's been up for 3 days because of amphetamines, and you interview them when they check in or the next morning or a couple days later, and if you were a psychiatrist, you give them a diagnosis of depression because they're low energy and flat and nothing is interesting to them, and they're look like a depressed person. But if you caught them a couple of days earlier while they're still under the influence of the amphetamines, you might say this guy's manic. I mean, look at him. He's running around. He keeps taking his shirt off. He's saying he's got superpowers, but that's the amphetamines. And that's true with a lot of stuff. It's, if you talk to somebody who came in and they were drinking and they've gotten stabilized, but they're used to having something to manage their feelings in the form of alcohol, and you interview them a few days in, you're probably going to give them an anxiety diagnosis because the guy's jumpy and nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. But that doesn't mean that he has an anxiety disorder or that he's bipolar or psychotic. It just means there are other confounding factors. So what we do when we do psychiatry is we work closely either with our own psychiatrist on staff or with the local team. And we're skeptical of carried diagnoses. We always ask, well, so who told you you had ADHD, or who told you had, bipolar? Oh, well, at the treatment center, they said that. Okay, well, how did they make that diagnosis? Oh, well, they just told me on the first visit. Okay, now we're suspicious of the diagnosis. So for patients who are acutely psychotic and their sense of reality is so impaired that they're agitated or anxious, you don't want to wait on medicating them, but only to the extent of helping them become safer and to stabilize. You don't want to keep them on long-term medications for that. For patients who have documented, real, legitimate psychiatric problems like schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or mania, and we know, and we can check the records, and this is like this when they're not drinking, this is like this when they're not using substances, this mental illness is present. We believe those. We talk to the psychiatrist, we talk to the referring doctors, we get the backstory, talk to the family. Oh yeah, no, that's Ed. He's always like this. And so we feel better about what our diagnoses are. And you can't always get that information. And when we don't have that information, when we don't know for sure, we just put question marks and wait and see. We let the patient finish his detox. We let the patient settle in. We don't put meds on everybody just because they seem to be a certain way. And oftentimes they don't need anything at all. They need the community. They need 3 hot meals a day. They need to be off of the streets. They need to be out of the living environment where they were. They need a shower and clean clothes, and they need somebody that cares about them and is patient enough to let them be a little uncomfortable for a while until everything settles down. So we have a very slow to diagnose philosophy because those things are sticky. Oh no, well, I saw these guys and they told me I have this. And so we're very circumspect. We're very cautious with labeling people with those things. And then of course, for that reason, we're slow to give medications. So we don't feel like this is a race against time that we have to hurry up and use high dose antidepressants or something like that to get, a lot of times, and I'm not knocking anybody, but a lot of times the patients in some of these places, they'll be like zombies, and they're not on any controlled substances, but they're on a rainbow of pharmacologic drugs because the goal is containment and just to get a lid on them so that they stay put and quit causing trouble. And I can't stand that. That's wrong.
Yeah. And that's, and I agree 100%, which is what I've seen over the years with the two facilities that I just mentioned. I saw just that, the zombie factor.
Yeah.
The zombie factor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, keeping people in that state of mind for as long as possible. For whatever reason, this is what the protocol is. So I'm glad that you take the time. I remember I saw in your bio you were talking about the wham bam 30-day. You know, for some of these facilities, you know, 30 days, and then you out on your own to try to, you
Yeah.
know, get
Yeah.
back
Good
on
luck.
your feet.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You know,
It takes people years and years to slowly get bad enough where they need help. It's not a broken arm. It's not your arm was fine and then it broke and you go get it fixed and then you're fine. It's not that. It's by the time the wheels fall off, by the time there's a family intervention, or by the time you wave the white flag, or your boss says, hey, you know, it's time to get some help with this. You're not fooling anybody else. By the time that happens, you've tried to quit 50 times.
right.
You have done everything you can to moderate, to minimize, to take a break, to manage, to control. This has been going on for a long time. So when the volcano finally erupts and you know your life falls apart, you can't just grab all the lava and stuff it back in the volcano. This is a long-term problem. And so what we do is the initial stabilization part, make you feel better, keep you from bad things happening from alcohol withdrawal or benzodiazepine or opiate withdrawal, help you feel like a human being. That's just table stakes. That's just a very, very beginning. It takes a long time. Even if a patient could come in and I could magically implant understanding, and I can't, but if I could give somebody an epiphany, right? Oh, okay, now I understand it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still have the problem of habit. So
right.
Even though you understand, okay, well, alcohol bad, I should not drink. You've got the problem of habit, of routine, of right. And for people with alcohol use disorder, what they say is, okay, I know that I shouldn't drink, so I'll be really careful when I drink, which is crazy, right? It's crazy. Yeah. If you were allergic to lemons, you wouldn't try to have a sip of lemonade.
Right.
You wouldn't go, well, I really like it. We're like, Kenan, don't you remember last time you swelled up? We had to give you a shot. You almost quit breathing. Like, yeah, I know, but I'm gonna cut it with some water this time, and I'm not gonna drink so much. Right. You wouldn't do that, but people do that with alcohol. So even though they know better, it takes time to do better. It takes practice at, I feel scared, or I feel overwhelmed, or I feel bored, or I feel burned out, or I feel, I want to have sex, but I haven't had sex sober, so I don't know what that is. So I'm just going to have a drink of wine or two, or, whatever. I don't want to tell her that. And then the next thing you know, you're back off to the races. Mm-hmm. So what we do is just the beginning. It's just yes, there's the yellow brick road, but you still have to walk it to get back into your 85th anniversary of Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
But it takes practice. It takes time to build a new habit. The old habit of drinking never goes away. So you have to replace it with a different habit, which is, I don't know, it's maybe like, I'm feeling weird, so I call my pal Kenan and talk about my day. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, glad you brought that up. Here's what's going on with my day. And then at the end of that conversation, 10 minutes, we both feel better.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But unless that's a habit, I don't want to bother him. He's probably busy, and he probably, he's got his own problems, and I don't want to. Right. If you talk yourself out of asking for help, you're not going to reach out for it. So it takes. Oh, Kenan. Oh, I call him all the time. Oh, it's every day, 5 o'clock. We're like, how's it going? Sometimes that's it. It's going fine. All right, it's all I got time for. But we talk every day, and that's as much about a habit, about creating a habit. That's how you, right? There's no escape from habits.
And you talk about the science of habit formation as part of what you do. And you have something called the Dr. Giles method, which is what we saw in the
Mm-hmm.
clip that I just showed. Um, in the few minutes that we have left, talk a little bit about the Dr. Giles method, and also, are you still part of what's called Oral House?
Yes, Oral House is one of our longest partners, I guess is a way to say it. We provide the medical care for them,
Okay.
and definitely still part there. And the method has to do with not taking a rubber stamp or a cookie cutter approach to the patients. So every patient is different. Every person's circumstance is different, and you have to um, spend enough time and have enough awareness of that notion. And it's sort of obvious when you think about it, right? Every person's different. But
Yeah.
when you're trying to get through a list of patients, you're trying to see everybody, get everybody taken care of. Sometimes you can start to generalize and say, "Oh, this guy's a drinker, so this is what we do for drinkers. This guy's a cocaine guy, so that's what we do for cocaine." And that'll work. That'll work part of the time.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Best Dicks Treatment Center.
Yeah.
They're good people over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, really good, really good.
Mhm.
And they've been around a long time now. And Bob Forrest helped get them started years ago now, a dozen years or so ago. He's the fellow from
Yeah, I remember him from Dr. Drew's show.
yep.
Yeah.
And good guy. Heart's in the right place, and that's what this place is all about. Pretty pictures, but this will get
Now,
you, yeah, this will be
now,
nice and comfortable, but it's hard work. It's hard work.
right, and being at a place like this, again, it just kind of sets the tone to create a new habit because you're in a different atmosphere.
Yes, breaks the
You're
pattern. Yep.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
breaks the pattern, it breaks the
Yep.
monotony, it can break everything because
Yes.
again, you're in a different environment than what many, if not most people that are addicted to drugs, they're in a totally different environment. They're in smaller spaces. It's not near the water. You're not, you're not around. You're around your peers, but again, all of you are in this safe space.
Yes.
Safe space, and so it kind of sets the stage for the individual to want to do something better. Like, oh wow, I didn't know that all this was possible. You know.
Yes. And you bring up an excellent point. Sometimes it's hard to be who we want to be when we're around the people that we've been pretending, or we've been somebody who we don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're in a fresh environment, you can be whoever you want. You can practice, or you can experiment with being honest.
Yeah.
Right. You can ask for help. Maybe you're not the guy who asked for help in your life where you came from, but in a place like this where it's all new people, and the general vibe is trying to get well and trying to help people get well. Maybe you tell the truth about what happened when you were a kid. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're honest about your relationship that you've been pretending a certain way,
Yeah.
and it's not true. And because you can leave it here, right? Well, if this doesn't work out, I can be honest here, but no one back home is going to know about this stuff because it's all private and anonymous and secure. Yeah, there's Bob. And so it's a great place to reinvent yourself. It's a great place to try something new. It's a great place to start over,
Yeah.
because who's going to know, right? Who's going to know that you secretly like broccoli, but everybody in your family thinks you hate broccoli, so you can't. I'm making that up. But,
Yeah.
that's probably not it. It's probably something more serious. But it's yeah, it's good. It's not a hard place to relax. It's not a hard place to be comfortable. And this is one of the sort of higher end or fancier or higher thread count, as I like to say,
Yeah.
treatment centers for sure. This particular one, but they have a range. Believe it or not, some people would feel very uncomfortable in a fancy house by the shore. They wouldn't be able to relax. Some people need a more urban, or grittier, or more
Yeah.
not as fancy environment. So
This might be a little too much.
it might be too much, and they might think all these people have their lives together, and believe me, they don't. Right? No one who comes to any one of these places.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate enough to look after some folks in fancy places like this, but also places that are indistinguishable from county or more accessible facilities. And I will tell you that that's not the stuff that matters. The reason I like Oro House so much is one of my favorites of the people that we look after. Is I like them all. We don't work with any bad treatment centers. There's nobody. If you look me up and say, okay, Dr. Giles is here, I'm not anywhere I don't think is great. So Oro is a great example, but they're all good. And what matters is not the buffet or the view. What matters is the staff.
Yeah.
That's really what matters. And Oro has an excellent staff. The Lumina Group have an excellent staff. Wish has an excellent staff. eMen has an excellent staff. And all the places where we are. And one of the nice things also about this telemedicine approach is that we have great communication with them. So you don't have to wait till somebody comes by once a week to drop in and see the patients. They just reach right out to our team. And that's one of the, I didn't know that would be one of the benefits, but it's the accessibility. I don't know, maybe your friends and colleagues can reach you by phone all the time. They can reach us by phone all the time.
Yeah.
And that turns out to be unusual in the field because there's a lot of requests, but we have it set up where we can take care of people, very quickly and help the staff on site, help the patients on site. And also the clinical teams, right? The clinical teams are dealing with all the feelings and the emotions and the habits and the behaviors, and them being able to reach out to us is pretty awesome. Because sometimes there's like, I've got a hunch about this guy. I think this is what's going on, and they can check with us. And our providers are like, yeah, I saw this in here. And you wind up with this team collaborative approach, which winds up being not just better for the patients and better for the staff because you feel like you're cohesive, but faster. You can get a lot of work done faster rather than, part of why going to a counselor is not as good when you get to this stage where you need to check into rehab as going to rehab is in the treatment center. You've got a whole bunch of counselors and they're all talking with each other. So I don't know, maybe you have a hunch about somebody, but it hasn't reached the level where you are sure, but you can talk to a colleague and she's like, yeah, I was kind of seeing some of the same thing. And then the trainer says, yeah, when he was in the gym today, we saw, here's what we saw. And you can formulate a deeper understanding of a patient's situation because of this team approach. So we're part of the team. Sometimes there's medication, sometimes it's too much medication. Sometimes it's things that need to be right. Sometimes he didn't want to say anything, but here's what we did. And we get these little tidbits that then we can act on and help people faster.
Yeah, I saw on the website that we were just looking at, Oro House, you have a pretty diverse staff. So because every individual comes in with a different set of circumstances. So it's great that you do have that diversity. So everyone can have someone that they can communicate with.
Yes.
According to their specific situation or challenge.
So important. Because we talk to people who we think we relate to and we identify with. And sometimes it's how they look, and sometimes it's how they sound, and sometimes it's their background. And, none of that really matters because we're all human beings underneath it. But sometimes at that superficial level, you're like, well, yeah, I can talk to her because she likes horses, or yeah, I can talk to him because he's from Long Beach or
right.
whatever.
Right.
And you can make that connection. I grew up not far from you in Santa Monica.
Okay.
And you can make that connection, and then once we get past that, those similarities, that part's not that important. What really matters is, I feel like I want to drink. Yeah, me too. And how'd you deal with that? And that's what matters, right? Or I don't know what to do about this situation at work, or I don't know how to handle this. I'm getting older. What do I do about that? and then you can have this human connection, which
Right.
is way more important than where you grew up or whether you like horses.
Yeah.
But at the superficial level, that may be how you connect. And if
Yeah.
it's all guys in suits, we're going to lose some people, right?
Right.
If it's all dudes in ripped up jeans, we're going to lose some people. So having I didn't think about that, but now that you mentioned it, yes, it's important. And that staff is actually really, they're just cool people. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just cool people over the
Yeah.
ownership group. And this is always the case in treatment facilities, is that it depends on who the owners are. Because it's still a bit of a wild west, right? So it's a medical problem. We're doctors, nurses, we're involved, but it's not just a medical problem. And so we treat this in with these community residential centers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because that's where the actual problem is. It's in how you relate to other people. And if you
Right.
have a good ownership team, then they understand the problem and they put their attention and their resources in the right place. If you have an ownership team that's focused on other things like money or being the biggest or being the whatever, then you can feel it. Everybody can feel it, and the staff that they attract, that you can feel it. And we don't work there. We avoid that vibe because the patients are the most sensitive people in the world, right? It's a guy who's drinking alcohol to manage his feelings. That guy's got his sensitivity turned up to 1,000.
That's
And
right.
if you try and bullshit that guy, he knows.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? He knows. And so you can't fool him, and he's going to see through whatever the crap you're trying to sling is.
Yeah.
And then you'll lose him, and then that becomes an unsafe environment.
Yep.
So whatever's going on at the top, the people all the way down to where the patients are, the whole staff can feel it. Everybody can feel it. They know. So we only work with good people.
And I'm glad that you have what's called the holistic non-12 step.
Yeah. That's good for some people.
Yeah.
And some people it's they had some trauma with it, or they were I mean, the good thing about AA, and I love AA, is that it's open to everybody. The bad thing about AA is that it's open to everybody. So the people in it don't necessarily know what to do or how to take care of you, but that oftentimes does not keep them from telling you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the literature, if you read the AA materials from official from headquarters, it says don't do that. Don't weigh in on people's mental health. Yeah. Don't prescribe medications for them. Don't tell them to stop taking their whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That does not keep the average member from making all kinds of comments about, right? Well, you shouldn't need to be on that. Suboxone is probably one of the biggest crosses to bear. So there's a major group inside of AA that thinks that you shouldn't be on Suboxone for opiates because that's just another opiate.
Yeah.
And we know that Suboxone saves lives.
Yeah.
We know it. And the AA says, well, listen, this book is written in 1939. We expect there'll be more things that will come out. But then some of these people say, oh no, you're not supposed to take anything. And then if you have a mental health problem that medications are helpful for, and you don't take them because your sponsor or somebody in AA told you not to, really bad things can and have happened. So the party line, the official position of AA is that they don't try to be doctors. Right. At your average meeting, some people might not follow that rule. So 12 steps great if 12 step is good for you, but for some people they want some other approach. Church turns out to be the number one method by which people get sober. So the Celebrate Recovery programs and church-based programs, that has AA beat 2-1 in terms of number of people that got sober through that program. Yeah. And AA officially would say, hey, of course, whatever it takes, go to your church or go to your mosque or go to your whatever, and because it's community and higher power and service, and you can find that in church. That's why, and AA basically came from the Christian world. So of course, yeah. But you'll get people in AA, in any organization, that have an opinion, and they don't say, hey, listen, this is just my opinion. I don't speak for the organization. They forget that they're not speaking for the organization. And so
Yeah.
that's why we need, so yes, there's non-12-step base there for sure, because it's not the end all and the be all. They're not hostile to it. They're not antagonistic to it, but
Right.
it's not the only way. This is not the only path.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the only path. And uh, just real quick, in the few minutes that we have, and I want to thank you for taking the time out to give us all this information and being so transparent with it. Um, a lot of people, as we saw this tranquil place, oral house, um, many people are hesitant to go to places like this because of the cost. And I know you talk about different places and the different ranges of cost to go to
Sure.
one of these facilities. Can you speak upon that real quick? How?
Sure. Sure.
Because people want to take their loved ones to some of these places, but they feel like they can't afford it. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, that's the old line about education. If you think an education is expensive, consider the alternative, right? So it's one of those things where um, if I'll throw it back to the person considering it. So if you've tried and tried and tried and can't seem to get traction on your own recovery, right? On your own getting sober and moving forward, then you should seriously consider seeking help in a treatment center. The ASAM, the American Society of Addiction Medicine, that's our parent organization. Their criteria depend on the severity of your illness. And if you're, had 2 glasses of wine when you meant to have one, and that's the first time that ever happened, I don't know anyone who would recommend you should go to treatment, because that's just a one-off, one incident, very trivial case. But if every time you do that, and if it's turning into something and your drinking reaches a certain threshold where it's affecting your life and you keep doing it negatively and you keep doing it anyway, then you should do something. But there's graded treatment. So the lowest level is talking with a counselor about it. That's usually in most people's reach with whatever insurance coverage that they have, or sliding scale or something. And outside of insurance, you can talk with your pastor or with your rabbi, or right, somebody about that. Say, oh, my wife's been on me about my drinking. You can talk with your doctor about it if you have a doctor, and open up the conversation. There's online help, so there's applications to help remind you to not drink. You can keep track of stuff. There's these digital therapeutics where you can pay attention to your drinking and notice if this is out of hand if you're not sure. But if you're sure and you have tried to stop and can't, then you should get into the best treatment that you can, because this is going to get out of hand. Who's going to get further out of hand and become more expensive? The question about cost, some of it is upfront cost and co-payments and that sort of stuff. And those are things to consider for sure. But the other thing is missing work, being out of the house, right? Where did Kenan go for 30 days? There were a lot of beer bottles in the trash can. Now there aren't. He was gone for 30 days. And so there's the cost of people knowing. Now, realistically, they know anyway, and they're relieved that you got help. But people think, oh, what are they going to think? They're going to think I'm an alcoholic. But well, they think that already. So don't let that deter you. But yeah, so there are numerous online sites where you can get your if you're considering a treatment center, and see how they rank and see what other people have said who went there. Any of the treatment centers we're associated with are excellent. And so if you look me up and pick one, then my team will be doing the medical care there. So that's how you're getting good care. But it's part of the federal mandate that parity, that if you have health insurance, it has to cover mental health, including substance use disorder. So you probably have insurance, or 85 or 88% of people have insurance to cover this in some form or another. And then for the people that don't have insurance, or who have lost their insurance, or have another story, there's other methods. So there's There's Medicaid-based help. There's scholarship programs. There's programs through churches that Salvation Army has a program that doesn't cost anything so long as you participate in their work. If you help, basically, it's sort of a work off the bill by doing work for the, and I know people who have done great who started out in fancy treatment, and then as they kept losing their job and it getting worse, and I know several people that wound up in Salvation Army, got the message. It's the same message in the fancy high thread count place as it is in the middle, and then down all this to the Salvation Army or the pastor. It's the same message.
Right.
Same program, which is to change your behavior and then turn that into a habit and then help others. That's the same. It's just a question of where you want that to happen. In a dormitory with 100 other guys sleeping on bunk beds at Salvation Army, you can get it there. You can get it at the beautiful home that's in Malibu with Oro, or anywhere in between. But if you developed a drinking or a sedative or an opiate problem such that you find you can't stop, it's actually dangerous to try to quit on your own. And so for people, especially drinkers, benzodiazepine or sedative users like Xanax and Valium and that sort of thing, and opiates. And the dangerous part about opiates is not that bad things are going to happen to you from withdrawal. It's that you're going to abandon the withdrawal and go back to using. And that's when people overdose, is when they use just a little bit, or they use half because they know that their opiate system is sensitive again to opiates,
right,
and it's too much. So those three groups, absolutely seek medical help for detox. The other substances, amphetamines, marijuana, which is a huge problem in growing problem, especially with young people, cocaine, those are the big drugs. And then there's some other ones, ketamine and things like that are not that common. Those people, you may not need medical help for the detox, but again, if you find that you can't stay stopped, you need to, elevate your intervention. You need to get more help. Most people with cancer, when they get a cancer diagnosis, they don't say, okay, well, what's the least amount of treatment that I can get? I know you're telling me I need surgery and chemo and radiation to give myself the best chance of getting rid of this, but what if I only want to do one of those things or half, right? People don't do that with cancer, not usually, but we do it with this malady, which is just as deadly. And we think, well, can I just read a book about it? Or can I just, do I have to talk to somebody about it? I'm like, yeah, do I have to check in? Yeah, And so if you thought about this problem as a cancer that's going to eat and destroy your life and the lives of everyone you care about around you, you would do everything you could, right? You wouldn't half-ass it. You would recognize this as the danger, as the snake that it is in your house, and you do everything you can to deal with it, and you continue to treat it that way. And that's what I would encourage your listeners to do. The more effort you put into it, the faster you'll feel better, and then the better your life gets. So be kind to yourself. That's what I would say.
Be kind to yourself, and again, form the new habit, or develop the new habit over a period of time.
Yep.
Not 30 days, but like what you did, you stretched it over a 5-year period.
Yes. I was a different person at the end of that experience.
Right.
Because, birthdays, funerals, birth of 2 children. I went through all of that without drinking, without using anything, all the feelings, all the ups and downs, getting jobs, losing jobs, moving several times, all of the stuff that I used to need something to have to, right, going back to anesthesia, being in that environment, that I used to need something in order to get through. I didn't need anything to get through any of that. And so my beliefs about myself changed because I went through all that stuff. Like, well, do you need a drink after work? Well, actually, no. I've come home from work now hundreds and hundreds of times and didn't have a drink. So maybe I don't need a drink after work.
Yeah.
Right. Start to see yourself differently, but only because of the habits. Right. There's a difference between a guy who is going to the gym to lose weight and a guy who just goes to the gym.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It takes a while of going to become one of those guys. It doesn't happen the first trip.
Oh
It
yeah.
doesn't happen the first, I don't know, several months, probably a year. But at a certain point, you're like, I just wake up and go to the gym. That's just, I'm just a gym goer.
Yeah.
That's when the habit it's when you've replaced the sit on the couch and eat the potato chips habit with the, well, I'm just a guy who goes to the gym.
Yeah.
And then you don't eat the potato chips because, well, I'm a guy who goes to the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. You become the gym rat.
From the gym, yes. And so you become the sober guy and you become you become that person. And then there's no way that you would throw away what you have for something like a drink. You
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Yeah. 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 And I want to thank you for taking the time out again. Tell everyone where they can find you, Dr. Giles.
So I'm just getting into this stuff. I've been I'm reaching out and making myself more available. And so you can find me on Instagram and X at Dr. Giles, Dr. Jason Giles, DrJasonGiles. I think you see it on there. So Dr. Jason Giles.
Yeah.
And working on a Substack and doing some more creative work to get these messages out. All the stuff we talked about. I've been thinking about these things for a long time, and I recognize that there's something's changed in the society, that our understanding of this problem and people's I think the embarrassment about it is at the lowest point in my life. I think people are more willing to do something about it. And then on the other side, back to your comment about this affects everybody. I think people know that there's help. It's not your fault if your wife drinks. It's not your fault. And so it's not like if you were a better husband, she wouldn't drink.
Right.
It's a problem that can be addressed and fixed. And so I think the loved ones are less inhibited and less intimidated to say, hey, no, this is not right. You're not supposed to, pass out on the lawn.
Right. Right.
Not okay.
Yes.
I'm not calling your boss to say that you're sick on Monday again. You need to do something about this because I love you and I don't want to lose you. And so I think the non alcoholics, the people without the substance problem, are becoming more enlightened. Also, I think they're figuring it out. And so there's a change. There's a change. If you watched Bobby Kennedy's confirmation hearing for HHS secretary, he said, yeah, I was a heroin addict for 27 years.
Mm-hmm. And
when I was a kid, you would not say that in your Senate confirmation hearing.
Right.
So something's, Bobby's sober a very long time, and something has changed, right? Something has changed in our society. If you're not embarrassed to say that in front of America.
Yeah.
So I can't sit on the sidelines. I recognize that my story, that what I went through, can be useful to some people. That if some people are thinking, well, I'm too far down the hole. You're not too far down the hole. So that's why we're talking. That's why I got out from behind the bushes.
Yeah, taking 100% responsibility. And once you are transparent, whether it's Bobby Kennedy telling the whole world that he was hooked for 2 decades plus, what else could you possibly be afraid of?
Come at me, bro. Right? I mean, what do you got? Right? So. Exactly. Right. And it turns out that the way we connect is not how we're strong,
Yeah.
The stuff you're good at, I'm terrible at. The stuff I'm really good at, you're probably not as good as me at.
Yeah.
That's not what's interesting.
Yeah.
Who cares? What's interesting is how we're the same, right? How we both wish we could do better, how we both screwed up here, how we both yearn to be better, right? That's how we're the same. And it turns out that feeling is universal. The feeling that there was something not right, well, that's very, very common. Very common.
Yeah.
That alienating, separate, isolating feeling. A lot of people feel that way all the time. And when I realized that was the case, I was not only not the only one, but that it was quite common. I was like, hey, you ever feel this way? I'm like, how did you know? Like, well, lucky guess, right?
Yeah.
And you start to collect connections and friends, and and deep human relationships on the basis of how you're both knuckleheads.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can really do something, right? Because all the pretense is gone, right. Who cares? Nobody cares about the paper on the wall.
Right. Yeah. All of us have certain commonalities about
Sure.
ourselves.
For sure.
You
Yeah.
know, final question for you. And I like
Yeah.
to ask a lot of my guests this question. What does life mean to you?
So it's love and service of others. That's what it means. We're
Love and
we're not
service.
we're not individuals. We're part of a family. We're all part of the same family.
Mm,
And sometimes it's easy to forget that, right? Somebody's voice doesn't sound like you, or their skin's different color than yours, or they eat different. I went to this market the other day because I'm curious about markets, and I stopped by this Eastern European market, and it was all weird stuff. It was all like different potato chips and different meat and different things like that. And it's for this expat community of like, Croatians and Serbians and that part of the world. And
mm-hmm.
so I hadn't had this stuff, and so I got a bunch of it just to try it. And it's basically the same. The hot dog is a hot dog. It's just
Right.
right, but it's their hot dogs, and maybe slightly different, but mostly not. And uh, and so you realize that these people on the other side of the world came up with the hot dog, or came up with the potato chip, and they're kids going down the street eating the same things that we're eating. These were shaped like chicken drumsticks, which was kind of cool. I thought that was neat. But
Right.
they were potato chips with some chicken flavor. And so the longer I do this, the more being a doctor and just being on earth as a human being, the more I realize that we're not different from each other. We're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're part of the family, well, love and support the family,
Yeah.
right? If we're all the same, then the way I treat you, it's the golden rule, right? The way I treat you is how I treat myself. It's not just how I want to be treated. It's that I'm the person who acts that way. I get the benefit of being the person who acts that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think life is being of maximal service to our fellows and loving them like they were ourselves.
Mm, mm. I like that. I like that. Being of service, because we are all connected. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not is irrelevant. We're all connected in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
You don't do shit by yourself, right?
Right.
Everything is with something else. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, start with your parents, right? You're not here without them.
Yeah.
And then if you have kids, your purpose is to reproduce. Well, that's not up to you. I mean, yeah, maybe you picked out a girl and maybe, you guys hit it off, but how much of that was really in your control? So we're in service of something bigger. And, you have to take that on faith, because it's not going to be shown to you. But my experience is, if I act that way, I see it all the time. But if I behave that way, then you can't miss it. It's everywhere, right? It's everywhere.
Right. It is everywhere. Dr. Giles, I want to thank you so much. Go to Addiction Doctors and check out Dr. Giles. And, wherever you are in the country, you can find a place that's right for you. That's right for you.
That's right.
And all of us have the opportunity to be just a little bit better. Just a little bit better.
A little bit better. That's right.
So I want to thank you for taking the time out to join me here and grace the stage with me here on the Kinetic Hour. And come back later down the road.
It's been my honor. It's been my honor, Ken. Absolute delight. Yeah, delight.
Thank you so much. And to everyone listening and watching, there's 1,000 podcasts that you can be listening to. So thank you for tuning in to the Kinetic Hour. As always, go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to Kinetic Hour, KENNETIC. Tell everyone that you know to share all of these great episodes and all this great information. Once again, thank you to Dr. Jason Giles for all the work that he does. And to all of you, until next time.